What if a letter arrived from someone who vanished 5 years ago? What if it called you to a place no one dares to go, an old lighthouse standing alone against the sea? Would you open the door? Would you follow the light? In the darkness of the cliffs, one woman's search for truth becomes a descent into something far more terrifying than she could ever imagine. Because at this lighthouse, the light does not guide you home, it calls you in. The sound of waves crashed against the rocks all around. The cold sea wind slipped through Anshin's coat. She stood before the old lighthouse that stood alone on the cliff. The beam of light turned slowly from its tower. But it seemed weak, as if it was about to fade away. She held a single letter tightly in her hand. The envelope was yellow and worn, faded by the salty air. The sender's name was Aaron, her older brother. He had disappeared 5 years ago. No one ever found a body. No one ever found a reason. Inside the letter, there was only one short sentence. Return to the lighthouse when the moon is full. Anshin never forgot her brother's handwriting. It looked shaky, trembling, as if written in haste before something terrible happened. The lighthouse door creaked softly as she pushed it open. Letters from the lighthouse continued. The wooden door groaned as it swung inward, revealing a spiral staircase winding up into the dark. A smell of damp salt and rust filled the air. Anshin stepped inside, her footsteps echoing faintly on the stone floor. Each step seemed to disturb the silence that had been sleeping here for years. The air grew colder as she began to climb. The lantern she carried flickered, its flame bending with every breath of wind that slipped through the cracks. Walls were covered in moss, and water dripped from the ceiling, landing in slow, rhythmic beats. Drip, drip, each sound echoed like a heartbeat. Halfway up, she noticed something strange. Scratches covered the wall, carved deep into the stone. They formed words, jagged and desperate, "Do not follow the light." Her heart tightened. She ran her fingers over the rough edges of the letters, and a sudden chill ran through her. It felt as if the stone itself remembered pain. She continued upward, her breath trembling. The light from the tower above grew brighter now, casting long, uneven shadows across the walls. It flickered not like a beacon, but like a pulse, alive, unsteady, almost watching. When she reached the top, she paused at the final step. The heavy metal door to the lantern room stood slightly open. A faint humming sound came from inside, low and rhythmic, like someone whispering beneath the wind. Anshin pushed the door slowly. Inside, the room was bathed in pale light from the rotating lens. The glass was cracked in several places, and the machinery turned with a painful grinding noise. On the floor lay scattered pages, dozens of them, all in her brother's handwriting. She knelt down and picked one up. It was another letter. "Do not trust the light," it said. "Once it calls your name, it never lets you go." Her eyes widened. The wind outside howled through the broken windows, making the lantern flame twist violently. Something shimmered across the lens, a faint reflection that did not belong to her. She looked up. A man stood behind the light. "Aaron," her voice cracked as she spoke. The figure didn't move. It stood perfectly still, half in shadow, half in light. The beam passed over his face, pale, eyes hollow, lips trembling like someone who had forgotten how to breathe. "Why did you come?" he whispered, his voice dry like dust. Anshin stepped closer, her hand trembling. "I received your letter. You asked me to come back." His eyes flickered, confused. "I never sent a letter." Her heart sank. "But, it's your handwriting. I know it's yours." Aaron looked down at the papers scattered on the floor. He knelt, touching them gently, his expression filled with sorrow. "The lighthouse writes them," he murmured. "It uses the ink of memory, it uses what you fear the most." Before she could speak, the light behind him began to spin faster. The humming grew louder, deeper, almost alive. The cracked lens flared with a blinding brilliance. Aaron's body stiffened, his mouth opened, but no sound came out, just a faint glow escaping from his lips. The same glow began to spill from his eyes, from his fingers. "Run," he said finally, his voice echoing inside her skull rather than her ears. "Do not let it see your name." The floor trembled. The machinery screeched. Every page of the scattered letters lifted into the air, swirling around her like a storm of paper and light. Anshin screamed and ran toward the stairs, clutching her lantern. The steps groaned beneath her weight as she descended. But with every turn, the spiral seemed longer, as if the staircase itself was stretching, refusing to let her out. The humming followed her. It was no longer just sound, it was inside her head, repeating her name softly. "Anshin, Anshin." She covered her ears, but it only grew louder. The lantern flame sputtered and died. Darkness swallowed her completely. Then, suddenly, silence. She stopped moving, gasping for air. The coldness around her deepened. In the faint moonlight that seeped through the cracks of the tower, she could see something on the wall ahead, another message carved deep into the stone. If you read this, you are part of it now. Her knees weakened. She fell against the wall, her hands trembling. The humming stopped, replaced by the sound of the sea, calm, endless, like nothing had ever happened. But when she turned, the staircase behind her was gone. Only a blank wall stood there. The exit had vanished. Her pulse quickened. She tried to shout, but her voice came out as a whisper. The air tasted of salt and iron. The letters from her brother lay at her feet once more, though she had left them above. One of them was open. Fresh ink still glistened on the page. It said, "Welcome home." The light from the tower above began to glow again, stronger this time, brighter, whiter, until it filled the stairwell. Anshin shielded her eyes, but the brightness pierced through her eyelids. It was not light anymore, it was a presence, watching, reaching. She felt it brush against her thoughts, flipping through her memories like pages in a book. Every fear, every regret, every unanswered letter she had written to her missing brother, the light knew them all. Tears streamed down her face. She screamed his name again, but the sound was swallowed by the radiance. Then, from within the brightness, she heard his voice once more. "Do you see now, little sister? The lighthouse does not guide ships. It calls souls." The glow around her began to twist and pulse, forming shapes, silhouettes of others who had answered the call. Some were faint as smoke, others clear enough to see their sorrowful faces. All of them mouthed the same words in unison. "Do not follow the light." But the beam from the tower had already found her. Her body froze. Her thoughts faded into a stillness deeper than fear. The hum became a song, beautiful, endless, devouring. The lighthouse turned once more, sweeping its light across the ocean, as if nothing had changed. On the next full moon, another letter appeared on a nearby shore. It was sealed in a yellowed envelope, written in a trembling hand. The name on it was new. It was addressed to someone who had never been to the lighthouse, yet, the night was silent once more. The storm that had raged around the cliff had passed, leaving the sea calm and strangely reflective. From far below, the lighthouse stood as it always had, tall, steady, its light sweeping across the horizon in slow, rhythmic turns. To anyone watching from the distant village, nothing seemed unusual. Only the familiar beam cutting through the mist, guiding ships that never came close. But inside, the air was different. The walls no longer wept with dampness. The humming had stopped, and in the lantern room, two figures stood side by side, faint, translucent, almost made of light themselves. Anshin and Aaron. Their eyes no longer held fear, only a quiet understanding. Aaron turned to her and smiled for the first time in years. "I tried to warn you," he said softly. "The lighthouse doesn't keep people out. It keeps us in." Anshin nodded slowly. "I know, but at least, we're not alone anymore." Outside, the light turned once more, casting their pale reflections across the sea. It was beautiful, almost peaceful, a moment frozen between life and something beyond it. For the first time, the siblings stood together in silence, watching the endless water shimmer beneath the moon. The sound of the ocean rose and fell like breathing. Somewhere in the distance, a bell from a passing boat echoed faintly. And then, a new envelope drifted ashore. It was damp, its ink smudged but legible. Inside was a single line written in delicate handwriting. "When you see the light, remember the names that came before you." The letter lay there on the sand as dawn approached. The first rays of sunlight touched the paper, drying the sea salt tears upon it. The lighthouse stood quietly in the background, no longer a warning, no longer a promise, but something eternal. Its beam swept one last time over the sea, and for a fleeting moment, if you looked closely enough, you could almost see two figures standing in that light, waving gently, as if saying goodbye, and then the light turned away, leaving only the calm sea, the whisper of waves, and the echo of their story, fading softly into the morning mist.